So thank you for coming. We've got a really good turnout, actually. Happy New Year and all that. This is pretty good timing because one of the main subsidies that we're going to talk about now is coming to the end very soon. So it is not too late, but it will be too late in the next couple of weeks, probably, if we don't get moving. So I'm going to step you through some of the main things. What we're going to cover, let me just change my slide, is the 50% wage subsidy opportunity, which is the one that's linked to training, but it's not just for apprentices and kids, which is what most people think. So I'll explain to you some of the misconceptions, I guess, and help you figure out whether it's something that is going to be useful to you. Who's excluded, and we'll try and do that fairly quickly up front so that if this is not for you, then you're not going to be wasting your time listening to the whole thing. Should only take us about half an hour maximum to get through all of this. And then we're also going to talk about other funding that's linked. Once you get the 50% subsidy, that unlocks other funding from state governments and some other state-based subsidies, especially for Victoria and Queensland. There's some pretty good money around for you guys at the moment. So just a housekeeping thing, Donna, I noticed you put your hand up, but I don't have the audio switched on. So if you want to ask a question, please do ask questions, because the problem with this stuff is that we know it inside out. There's a running risk that I'll end up using jargon. I'll try not to, but pop questions in the chat or the Q&A, wherever you want to put them. And every now and again, I will stop and keep an eye on them and make sure we've covered them. And then I'm happy to stay on at the end until we've answered all the questions. So if I say something and you go, I'm not quite sure what she means and it needs clarifying, or if you've got a question about your situation, happy to answer it. If it's something that's going to, benefit everybody, I'll answer it straight away. If it's something that we'll save that's just for you, then we might save it till the end, but we will make sure we cover it. So just quickly to get out of the way, why are we doing it? It's our area of expertise. One of these main grants is linked to training, and I used to run a training organisation. These days we help companies apply for government funding in a range of different areas. We're coming it ourselves. I have got most of my employees on this wage subsidy now, and I know, I'm sure lots of people in the same boat. For us, especially sort of small to medium-sized businesses, this ability to know that you've got half the wages covered for your people for 12 months, because that's how long it goes for, just gives you a sense of confidence and certainty in these really uncertain times, really. So it's been an absolute blessing for us, just being able to know that we've got half the wages covered. Also means we can try different, we can experiment with stuff. So we launched a podcast recently, which we wouldn't have done if we didn't have a wage subsidy, because it meant we could do it at less cost than normal. Obviously, the whole what's in it for us, at the end of the session, you might get us to help you. And I'll show you before we finish that we'll do that risk-free. Like, we're not going to charge you anything if you don't get any money from the government. Or you might choose to do it yourself. And my objective in this is to make sure that you get enough information as we do this, that you can go and do it yourself if you want to. You might, if you choose not to, then we'll be happy to help. And my other kind of soapbox, I guess, is that, and I'll show you the numbers in a moment, but when this first came out a year ago, which is amazing that thinks that it's been out for a year and a lot of people still don't understand how to use it. It hasn't been well promoted at all, but the big companies jumped in and claimed it like straight away. Within 3 weeks, 3/4 of the money was gone by big companies. And so it always happens that way. And so our mission at the moment is to make sure that some of the small companies get their share of the pie. It's been a really rough couple of years for small businesses, whether you are in dire straits or whether you're crazy busy. It's still been pretty stressful and challenging. And so we just want to make sure that some of the smaller organizations get some of the share as well. So what we're going to talk about is, slides are misbehaving. Bit of background just quickly. You probably remember, seems like forever ago, doesn't it, in the before times, that late 2020, JobKeeper was coming to an end. And it was really, really helpful for a lot of organisations, but it had some flaws. I mean, not all organisations were eligible. And the nice thing about the funding that we're going to talk about today is that almost everybody is eligible. It also, I guess some of the other flaws in it was that it didn't grow skills in the workforce. So it paid people to stay home, which some cases was good, but in some cases it was pretty difficult. I remember for all of us at the beginning, you had to pay the wages and then wait 6 weeks and hope that the government was going to pay it back to you and all that sort of thing. Really good question from Andrew. I'll answer that straight away. Do you have to have lodged your bases and claim GST and all that to get funding? No, that's what's really good about this one, is that I know with, like, remember at the start of JobKeeper, if you didn't have all your bases up to date, if you hadn't done a tax return, if you weren't an Australian-owned organisation, if you were turning over less than 75,000 or whatever, then you couldn't claim them. Whereas for this one, it doesn't have those restrictions. So a lot of those made JobKeeper harder, and this one's not as hard. And the other thing is that, it's paying people for not working, so it wasn't adding value to the business, but it was keeping the business alive, obviously. So then a year and a bit ago, October 2020, the government kind of quietly announced they put in a wage subsidy for 100,000 training places, and it's training with an N, not tradies. And most people were under the misapprehension by the way that it was promoted, that it was for trades. It included trades, but it was way broader than that. I mean, you could put people on a diploma of leadership and management or something like that and still claim the wage subsidy. And it was $2.8 billion. And within, by the end of that month, 70,000 of those 100,000 were gone, like I said. So 3 weeks later, they tightened up the criteria and said, we're going to focus it more on new employees rather than existing workers, because at the beginning, you could put all of your employees on it. If anyone's been around for like 20 years or more in business, you might remember 20 years ago, they did a traineeships kind of scheme, and all the big companies put every single person, including their CEO, on these programs. It was kind of like that again. Anyway, it only lasted for 3 weeks, and then they tightened up the criteria for existing workers. And I'm going to explain to you in a second the definition of new workers versus existing workers, because there's quite a lot of leeway, I guess, in the new worker definition, and you might be surprised at who you can claim for. 130,000 of the 100,000, how's that work? Places were used up by May last year. And then when the budget came out May last year, they uncapped it. They put another 170,000 places up, put in another 2.7 billion, and extended the deadline until March this year, as in a few weeks' time. In November last year, they tightened up the criteria for existing workers a bit more. So we have got now, where at the time that we're doing this, what's today, the 13th of January. So we've got 2.5 months in theory until you have to have your people registered for this one. And there are other grants I'm going to talk about in a moment, which go for a bit longer, especially for Victoria and for Queensland. But for this one, which is the national one, got till the end of March. However, because there are government-funded organisations in the middle of this who have to process these applications, they are running anything from 2 to 6 weeks behind at the moment because of the volume. So just when you're doing your thinking about this as we go, I would be making sure that you've got your expressions of interest in by the end of January to have a chance of getting your sign-up appointment in late February, early March, probably. And at the moment, the message is anybody who's not registered, done, completed, finished by the end of March is not happening. You can't be in the queue, you've got to be done and finished. Okay, so what is it? It's based, the main one that we're going to talk about today is based on the program, which you've probably heard of now. When we started talking about this to people a year ago, nobody had heard of it, and everyone was like, nah, it must be a scam. This can't be, government doesn't give you 50% of the wages. It was quite funny. Like, we initially just wrote out an email to a bunch of businesses that we thought would be eligible and weren't too big because we're trying to focus on smaller companies. And the number that wrote back and said, oh, you dodgy scammers, you're trying to take my money. I was like, oh no, we just thought we'd just tell people, and they go, yeah, cool, get us the money. Anyway, we've learned a bit since then. The subsidy, Paula, no, it's not the job maker one. This is another one. So the one we're going to talk about first is called Boosting Apprenticeship Commencements, but it's not just about apprentices. And then the next one that we're going to talk about is the Jobs Victoria Fund. And I'll show you some calculations on how you can actually combine the two if you're in Victoria. And there's Queensland's got another one, and the other states have got smaller ones and things like that. So the thing with things like Job Maker and JobKeeper and all those COVID wage grants and things is they're short lifetime, and often they stopped paying you once, you know, lockdown ended and things like that. Whereas this one, the good thing about this one is that once you're registered, you get it for 12 months, no matter what happens. So you get 50% of the wages back up to a maximum of $7,000 a quarter. So basically, if your person's earning more than $56,000 a year, you only get half of the 56, and then you have to pay the rest yourself. But the criteria is they've got to be enrolled in an approved qualification. And there's plenty of training providers that do good jobs of those qualifications. It's got to be like on-the-job training anyway, so it's not like you're going to lose them for days from your workplace. They should be working on what you're doing anyway. So every quarter, you put in, I'll explain to you the process in a moment, but basically you lodge your pay slips and they pay you back half of it, capped at 7,000 for every person. No limit on how many people you can put on it. The only limits are around new workers versus existing workers and what courses they do. And it's applicable. You can be a business, you can be a charity, not for profit, you can be a council. You just can't be a federal or a state government department. But you can't be a one-person organization because it's a training-based thing. So you've got to have someone there to train the person. But you could be a sole trader with one employee, and you could put your one employee on it, right up to you could be a 1,000-person company. So it pretty much covers all your new workers. And like I said, I'll explain to you in a second the definition of a new worker, and some of your existing workers too, depending on what industries you're in. So for some industries, which is why I wanted to know at the start what you do, and for quite a few of you, you can actually put a lot of your current staff that have been there for 20 years on this as well. Now, the thing that I will show you in a moment is how in the states where you've got state subsidies, you can claim them in combination with state wage subsidies. So we've got one person working for us in Queensland. We're paying her $56,000 a year. We're getting $28,000 back from the federal government. We're getting $20,000 back from the state government. So it's costing us $8,000 plus what do you call them? Super and holiday pay and all that sort of thing. Forget the word. So yeah, $8,000 for the year for that employee. So if you're thinking of doing any new projects, or like if you're like us and you're like, oh, we'd like to try offering that service, but we don't know if people are going to take it up. You don't really want to hire people to try it out and find it doesn't work. This is a chance to try some new things, hire some new people, and potentially cost you $8,000 a year per person to try the things out. I'll talk in a moment about the hiring thing, because I'd be interested to know actually, if you want to pop in the chat, is anybody employing at the moment, and are you finding it insanely difficult? That's a leading question, but if you are, that would be good. Okay, so Kathy, when you're partly funded by like the state government, you can still claim this. That's the crazy thing. So you can actually claim your normal funding. If you're funded by state government, that's fine, or a state government body, as long as you're not a state government department. So it doesn't matter where your funding comes from, as long as you're not a department of the state or federal government, everybody else is eligible. Okay, yep, hiring by, okay. And Vivian, you're hiring. All right, Kathy, that's cool. I'll talk to you a bit more about yours. So that's just a little bit of government paperwork just to show you it's a real thing. We had to put that up at the beginning because everyone was like, nah, it's not real. If you want to Google it yourself, it's called Boosting Apprenticeship Commencements, but don't get confused by the word apprentices. I will explain that to you in a moment. If you look, actually I'll explain it now. See the bottom line of that, it says, second to bottom line, Boosting Apprenticeship Commencements is a government wage subsidy to encourage employers of any size or industry Australia-wide to take on new apprentices and trainees. And trainees is the key word. So in the media, everything you see about this in the media is talking about trades. It's talking about we've hired another 200,000 apprentices. But those apprentices, in inverted commas, can be trainees. They can be a certificate 3 in business for an office person, can be dog grooming, it can be project management for your engineers. So if they've got degrees and things already, it doesn't matter if you want to upskill them. So you hire in some engineers, you want to put them through project management, or you want to hire disability services staff and put them through the individual support course, all of those things, as well as state funding potentially for the actual course, you can get money as a wage subsidy. 4 physiotherapists and 3 reception. Okay, so your reception staff, you might put on like Cert 3 in business or business admin or something like that. Your physiotherapists, you might want to upskill them in some specialised, diploma of, I'm trying to think what you might do with physio, I'd have to have a look. But your ones that are in a supervisory role, you might want to put in on a leadership management course or something. Small businesses in tourism, disability and international education. Okay, there is funding to hire people in all of those. You could do tourism, you could do hospitality, you could do individual support, you could do things like quality auditing if you've got to have internal audits, your thing. What about trainers and assessors who are enrolled in Cert 4 training and assessment? No, that's one of the few courses that's not on there, interestingly enough. But what you can do is, and we've got a number of real estate agents who are doing this, so one of the conditions on this program is that you get paid as long as the person is still doing the course. So basically, you choose a training provider that's going to make it a 12-month, distance kind of course, and you get paid the funding for 12 months. If you're something, say, for example, I think we had some real estate people, if you've got news to hires and you want to put them through the real estate licensing course, you don't want to wait 12 months for them to get that qualification, because they're pretty useless to you if they're not qualified, like they can't even hand out keys or anything. So what you do is you put them on like a certificate 3 in business or something like that, or business admin, or depending on what job they're in, make that your 12-month course, and then use some of your surplus funding from your $28,000 wage subsidy to pay for the real estate course. So you can do one of these courses on a traineeship basis and a fee for service course at the same time. Was that confusing? I hope I didn't make that confusing. I'm sorry. Do we have to pay for the course, or is the course also paid for the government? What state are you in, Rebecca? In different states, it's got different answers. So if you're in New South Wales, if for new workers, everything is free. New South Wales is just doing an amazing amount of funding for training right now. So you can put anybody pretty much on almost anything, and the New South Wales government will pay for it if they're a new worker. Qualified tradesmen that are existing staff, yeah, if you want to put them, Jeffrey, on an advanced trade or on a leadership kind of course or a business course, or something else that you want to train them in. For existing workers, it would need to be that they were doing something trade related to get funding. If you're hiring a new tradie, then you could get a wage subsidy for a much bigger range. I'll show you in a moment a few of the courses, for example. Marketing manager, project manager, and admin digital design person. Okay, so I know that there is a certificate 4 and a diploma in business, which has got like digital marketing and other marketing subjects in it, that one is funded for new workers in most states. Project management is funded for new workers in most states. Web design and that sort of stuff is funded for new workers in most states, and there are some IT courses which are funded for existing workers as well. And what else? So does this apply to me, self-employed, one-man business, training shared, no cause? Ellen, only if you wanted to hire yourself a PA. So right now you could hire yourself a full-time PA, depending on what state you're in, and it might only cost you $8,000 a year. So you can't claim it for yourself because you've got nobody there to supervise your own training. But you could, if you were thinking about hiring somebody to help you with anything right now, you could potentially get someone in and it costs you not much at all. Okay, Rebecca, if you're in Victoria, there is buckets of money, because you can get the federal government money for this and the state government Jobs Victoria money as well. So yeah, you hire someone in Victoria, Rebecca in Victoria, same thing, hire them on 56,000, they'll only cost you 8,000 for the first year. What if I am sole director but have more than one employee? Yes, absolutely eligible. It's only yourself, Gillian, that wouldn't be eligible, but your employees would be. Okay, thanks, Alan. Sorry, couldn't help. Okay. Like, just let me give you a quick why. So why they're doing it, it's usually like, what's in it for the government? Well, from the government point of view, I think we have learned some things from other countries, perhaps not anything about rapid testing, but we'll leave that alone right now. But some of the things that we have learned is that to keep things going, we need to make sure that we're boosting employment through this insanity. So there's been a real focus on adjusting this to make it about boosting employment and upskilling employees, because when we come out the end of this, we need to make sure that our businesses are sustainable and adaptable and that we can keep going. So this is an awesome opportunity to support your business and also develop some skills for your staff. One of the things that we're finding, and I'm sure you're finding as well, is that when you're hiring at the moment, I'll give you an example. I ran a job ad for a client. We don't do that as a service. I just did it because I was helping them. They were advertising an office admin position. They advertised it, worked from their office. They got 9 applicants. This is in early December. Ran the same ad for ourselves. Almost the same ad, said that they would have the flexibility to work from home part of the time, and said that it would include a qualification so that there was a benefit to them getting the job, but they would get a qualification. I switched off the ad at 200 applicants. Now, I know that for any of you that are in hospitality, retail, anything that people actually have to do with their hands, not just their brains, you can't do the home-based thing. It's impossible. But I'd be really interested to do a test and run it and see how much of that was the qualification that attracted the employees and how much of that was the home-based thing. I think it was probably 80% home-based, 20% qualification. But employees want to get upskilled. They want to make sure that they've got what they need. If you can upskill your people and get paid for it at the moment, it does increase the number of people that you're likely to attract to the position. And it also increases, there's a lot of research that says it increases the chances that they will stick around. That if you've got a 12-month wage subsidy, you got them on a 12-month training program, you've got a better chance that you might get to keep them for the 12 months. Gillian, yes, we'll send you out. Just email us and we'll send you out the recording of it if you like. That's fine. Kathy, what's the time commitment for these courses? Depends what state you're in. Victoria has a requirement that if you've got a full-time employee on a full-time traineeship, then you give them 3 hours a week to work on their courses. You can put a full employee on a part-time traineeship, and then you only have to give them 1 hour a week to work on their course. But it's that sort of amount. So you might find you have to give them somewhere between 1 and 3 hours to do it. But you choose a training provider where working on the course is something practical and useful for your actual business. So if you're putting them on a project management course, for example, you're giving them a project to do, and then their homework for their course should be documenting stuff for your actual project. So choose, and that's something we can help you with, is choose a provider that's going to give you practical, useful training. Not you don't need to send them off to college for 6 weeks of the year or anything like that if you don't want to. Okay, is Queensland similar for time? Queensland is a bit more flexible, but you do need to give them time during working hours to do it. So yeah, somewhere between 1 and 3 hours a week. Or I would look at it as a monthly average, probably somewhere between around about 10 hours a month to work on it is probably reasonable. But just make sure that you're choosing a training provider that's not getting them to do stupid, unnecessary activities, but that it's actually relevant work stuff. And are there maximum wage limits? No, the subsidy is capped at 50% of $56,000. So they've capped it at $7,000 a quarter. You can pay the person as much as you want, you just won't get half of the extra. So they'll give you the 7,000. If you're paying them more than 14,000 a quarter, you'll get 7,000 a quarter. If you're paying them less than 14,000 a quarter, you'll get half of the gross pay that you pay them. And it's the same as their part-time. I mean, you can have someone on 1 day a week and pay them $50,000 a year if you wanted to, and you could still get half of that. It's just capped out at that 7,000. If that makes sense. Oh, and new worker definition, I'll cover that next in a second. Tasmania, yes, options, there are options for you. Actually, we just helped someone sign on one student in Tasmania the other day. That Tasmanian government doesn't have a prescribed amount of hours that you have to give them. It's more of a sentence that says something like the employer must ensure that the student has the opportunity to do their course and engage in it and stuff like that. So it's flexible around you. Shane, can they be casual? Short answer is no, but there's an opportunity in casuals, which I will explain in 5 minutes if you want to make sure you stick around for that, that basically you could potentially, so the definition of, I'll show you the slide, it's easier, but yeah, there's some opportunities for casuals in terms of potentially reducing the cost of them for you. Cert 2 or 3 in drilling, Cert 3 in retail, yes, for new workers. Certificates in drilling, I'm 90% sure that that's there for existing workers, but we can check that for you, Gillian. But retail definitely for new workers, and drilling, I'm pretty sure it's for new or existing workers. All right, let me just explain to you the eligibility and the new and existing worker thing. So like I said, any employer, anywhere in Australia, as long as you're not the state and federal government department, any industry, any business size, full-time or part-time staff. I'll explain the casuals thing in a moment. This is different from JobKeeper. Australian citizens, of course, but also New Zealand citizens are included as long as we have been there for more than 6 months. And you can probably tell by the sophisticated way that I pronounce my vowel that I'm originally from New Zealand. And so pretty much if you've got any Kiwis working for you, they've probably been here for more than 6 months, since we can't get back to New Zealand anyway, but that's a whole other thing. Certificate for in marketing, yes, that is suitable, that's allowed for new employees. Anyone who's got permanent residency, anyone who's got a visa with a P next to it. So as long as it's a visa that allows them to stay indefinitely, then they're eligible as well. So that's quite a lot more people than were eligible for JobKeeper. Can the course be an international course, i.e. not one provided by the government, like a physio specialist course? Rebecca, what we're recommending to people in that situation is that if the course doesn't have to be provided by the government, but it has to be accredited by the government qualifications agency. So if it's not a government accredited qualification, what we're suggesting is you put people on, you might even say put your admin staff on a government accredited admin course, and then use some of your surplus wage subsidy funding to pay for your physio specialist course or something like that. If that makes sense, does that make sense? And the other key thing in this though too is it can be experienced people, can be professionals. You could hire like a 40-year-old office person with 20 years office experience, put them on a business diploma or a certificate for an entrepreneurship or whatever's relevant for your business. And they can have a PhD. And as long as they've not got the exact same qualification that you're putting them on, then they're still eligible. Right, I just had to make a quick slide to show you the dollars because, 5 people, full claim, 140,000. Worst case, if you're in a state where you don't get much subsidy for the course or you don't get a free course and you're paying full fees to the most expensive training provider, you're going to come out with over 100,000. Plus, a lot of states give payroll tax incentives. A lot of states will pay you an extra few $1,000s depending on the previous qualifications the person's got and things like that. Yeah, Verna, if you just want to message us, we'll make sure that we send you the recording. Just shoot us back an email. I will get it out to you. And I'll try and speed it up. Sorry for people. I know you're all busy. Okay, here's my Victorian example. So Victoria has a thing where if you hire women over 45, anyone under 25, single parents, people who've migrated to Australia in the last 4 years, all sorts of other categories of different people, you get an extra $20,000 from the state government. If you hire some different other age groups, like I think it's if you hire men over 45, you get $10,000 from the state government. So if you're in Victoria, you hire a 45-year-old woman for an office job, extra employee that you didn't have before, you get $28,000 from the federal government for training them. You get $20,000 from the state government for hiring a 45-year-old woman. Yay, us. I'm a bit optimistic to say I'm 45 anyway. And you get another $4,000 from the state government if she doesn't have any previous qualifications. So the annual cost of that employee for the first year is going to be $4,000. Like, it's a no-brainer really to me. That's why I'm hiring madly at the moment before this thing finishes. A few interesting statistics are claimed so far. 60% of them have been not traditional trades, 40% now are in small business, thank goodness. 20% have been employees over 35. The skills shortage thing, I did this in December, so ignore my date, but there were 250,000 jobs being advertised on SEC just before Christmas, and 100,000 of those in hospitality. Sorry, hospitality people, it's tough, hey. So big skills shortage. So if you can do anything to make yourself stand out, like offer a free qualification to someone if they come and work for you. Right, new workers. Here are the new worker opportunities. I've written coming out of lockdown. I should be going back into self-imposed lockdown, isn't it? So ignore my dates. I'm sorry, I should have updated this. We are now January, so that should say October. So anybody that you have hired full-time since the middle of October is eligible. So anyone that you've hired in the last 90 days, even if you've already hired them, that's the important thing. So have a quick think. Have you employed anybody since October last year? And if you have, then we need to get onto that quite quickly because we can probably claim the $28,000 for you. Right. This is not November last year, though. Sorry, this is not helpful because these slides are out of date. Anybody that you hired part-time in 2021, basically. So if you hired them part-time within the last 12 months, then they're still eligible. So we're in January 2022. If you hired anybody in 2021 on a part-time basis, then you should be going back and claiming it for them as well before their 12 months runs out. Once you've got them signed up, you can claim the subsidy for another 12 months. Anyone that you're going to hire before the end of March, but just remember that you'll probably have to hire them before the end of February to get through on the waiting list because they're going to run out of spaces to put them through. Let me just check the questions. Yes, Donna, that's fine. We'll send you out a recording, no problem. Okay. who else can you get? Right. If you've already hired them and they've been full-time for less than 90 days, so 3 months, or part-time for less than 12 months, then we should be jumping on those ones and getting them onto the program. Now, here's your question about casuals. Sorry, I don't remember who asked me the question about casuals, but here it is. If you've had casuals working for you for 20 years, say, and there's a whole industrial relations question, which is not my area of expertise, but if you've had casuals doing regular hours for a long time, you've got a good risk that one day if they leave, they go to Fair Work and say, look, they deemed me to be a casual, but I'm actually a part-timer because, I worked there for so long doing similar hours, and they come back and hit you up for holiday pay and sick pay and all that sort of thing. So the rules for this one say that you can claim it for a part-timer. In Victoria, it's 13 hours a week, and most other states, it's 15 hours a week. So let's say 15, is just make it easier, who average 15 hours a week for you, so 2 days a week, over a month. So basically, if somebody does 8 days a month for you, or 60 hours a month of work as a casual, you might want to consider making them into a part-timer instead. You can still roster them, like they don't have to do the same hours all the time, but as long as they're getting 60 hours a month, and you could potentially be paying half the wages that you're paying now because you'll get half of it back. And they are eligible for a whole range of courses. They're basically sort of deemed a new worker because it's an upgrade to their position. So you might want to consider upgrading your casuals to part-timers and halving your wages bill for a year. Or you can upgrade them to full-time too, of course, if you want to. And the same with your part-timers. If you've got part-timers and you upgrade them to full-time, you might have someone working 20 hours a week or 19 hours a week for you. You agree with them that they're going to do 38 hours a week for a year. They cost you the same as they're costing you now, but you get twice the work for a year, and you can put them on a 12-month contract. You don't have to it doesn't have to be a permanent job forever. So come the end of the wage subsidy, you don't have to keep them going forever. But hopefully by the end of the wage subsidy, they've been contributing enough to your business that you can afford to keep them. Okay, so if they're casual by choice because of the higher rate, Shane, then you have to think about whether it's worth it to you to make them a part-timer on that higher rate and get half of it back. That might still be worth considering. It's your business strategy decision. But if you're paying them, an extra 25%, but you're getting 50% back, it might still be worth doing. And then you've got to think about whether they want to do a course, obviously. So those last two, the casuals and the part-timers being upgraded, you won't get a free course for them, but you will get the wage subsidy. So you just have to pay for the course yourself. But there's a whole range of courses and a whole range of prices for these things. Yeah, Melissa, actually, why don't we just send everybody the recording? Rachel, if you're on, can we just make sure we send the recording out to everybody, and that way we won't be bothering. But please stick around for the last 10 minutes anyway, because I've got good stuff to show you. But I will make sure we send you out the recording. Okay, a few course examples for new employees. So Cert 2 in hospitality is approved. These are in most states. Each state is slightly different. Western Australia, some of the diplomas aren't approved, but there are lots of certificate 4s. You do Cert 2s in hospitality, you do business, retail, various trades, project management, health and safety, environmental management, entrepreneurship, a whole bunch of stuff. Human resource management, pretty much every business is going to have something that you can do. We haven't had a business yet where we can't find anything for them. So here's a couple of ideas in terms of how to actually use it. Some of these things are things I've been doing myself. Right, like I was just saying, Shane, that was casual, sorry. If you've got part-timers, you can make them full-time for a 12-month contract and the wage cost could stay the same. And then you could agree that it's a 12-month full-time contract and then they go back to part-time. If you've got casuals, you can make them part-time and halve your wage bill. Even if you kept them at the higher casual rate, you could still halve the wage bill for that period of time. This is something that we've done. Hiring one person anyway, hire a second one on a 12-month contract, and it will cost you the same as if you're hiring one, and you get some extra projects done while you're doing it. And then there's some interesting little variables for stood down staff and things. So for those of you particularly in New South Wales and Victoria, if you laid people off and they're coming back after more than 6 months, then they're basically counted as new. So there's lots of options for them. If you hired them and then you were shut down for a few months and now you're open again, that's 90 days for full-time workers and 12 months for part-time workers. The government agencies who sign people up have got the discretion to exclude the dates that you were closed. So you might have hired someone 5 months ago, but they've only worked 2 months and you've been shut the rest of the time. You probably will still be able to get those ones approved. Does that make sense? Yeah, Crystal, I think we will send. I'll send. Did you want the slides or the recording? Just let me know, and we'll make sure we send you out the recording, and I'll see if we can get the slides to you as well, if it was a slide specifically that you wanted. Does this include superannuation? So, excuse me, sorry, the cat has just got to visit away. The 50% that they pay you is of their gross pay excluding super. So it includes their PAYG tax, but not the superannuation. So you do have to pay the super yourself on top of this. Still, it's pretty much still worth it. Well, it is still worth it. Okay, so existing employees, let me just explain the go with existing employees. And existing employees is anyone who's been full-time more than 90 days, part-time more than 12 months, and could have been there for 20 years or more. This has got a much smaller list of things that are available for people, and I'll explain how that works. So for your people that have been working with you for 10 years, this is a quote out of the government rules. They're only eligible to get the back payment, as we call it, which is the wage subsidy, if they're doing a trade. So if you've got a labourer and you want to put them on a trade, now's the time you'll get half. And actually for those ones, you'll get half their wages paid for the first year, then 10% for the second year and 5% for the third year. So that's well worth doing if you're actually a trade business. If you move them from casual to part-time or full-time, then we've covered that one. That then becomes eligible for the funding. If you move them from part-time to full-time, then they become eligible for the funding. Now there's a list called Appendix E, I think it's called now. It used to be called Appendix I, which is a list of what they call trades-based Australian apprenticeships, because if you look at that first line above, if they do a trades-based Australian apprenticeship, they're eligible. That 13-page list is not just what you would think of as traditional trades. If you see the fine print there, it's Certificate 4s or Certificate 3s that lead to certain occupational outcome codes. So basically skills shortage areas. It's got things like, it's got greenkeepers on there, it's got dog groomers, it's got cyber security, it's got all the trades, the normal trades, and quite a broad range of trades, like all the sort of fitters, welders, plumbers, all those sort of things, hairdressing, chefing, what else is on there that's more generic? Some IT courses. And then it's got a couple of others like workplace health and safety and things, which I want to explain to you because there's been a few people have had a few issues with these, and we've had to come in and rescue a few people with this one. So, for example, new existing workers, trades, easy peasy. If you've got anybody that's working for you that's doing a trade that wants to learn another trade or upgrade the trade, now's the time to do it. If you've got existing IT people, there's cybersecurity courses. There's a course called Home Sustainability Assessment. So if you're like environmental or house inspectory type people. In New South Wales and WA, there's a course called the Certificate for Environmental Sustainability, which people are actually allowed to do if they're an office manager, interestingly. So it's a business Cert 4, but it's about making your business sustainable. So that's a weird little quirk that you could possibly use if you've got office staff that have been there forever and you want to get a subsidy for them and train them. Now, if you want to put someone through the Certificate 4 in Workplace Health and Safety, oops, let me go back, sorry, and they are an existing worker, then you can claim a wage subsidy. Now, you can imagine what has happened is that the entire country of Australia went, oh, all my workers need to do a Certificate 4 in Workplace Health and Safety, which is probably not unreasonable at the moment with all the safety and health stuff we have to worry about. But after one chicken franchise that shall remain nameless put pretty much every one of their teenagers that sell chicken on a Certificate for Workplace Health and Safety and said that they were all safety officers, the state governments now are being quite strict on that. So your person, if you've got an existing worker and you want to put them on a Certificate 4 in Workplace Health and Safety, they need to be working in a safety role, like they need to be in safety, HR, something that is directly safety related. They can't be a front counter person at a chicken franchise, chicken franchise people. So if you're in a kind of high risk industry, most of you probably would get one person through on that, as long as you've got, someone that's doing safety as a job. So have a chat with us about that, but we can't go nuts and put all your people on. They'll just get rejected and, it won't end well. And that's why I mentioned at the beginning too, if you're in civil construction or anything, so if you're making roads or tunnels or demolishing things, then your existing workers can do the supervisor's course as well. So that list there is for people who've worked with you forever who you can still get a wage subsidy for. Let me just check the questions. We've got a few, both please. Okay, Crystal, you might just want to email me, Crystal, if you don't mind, and ask for the slides as well, because otherwise we'll just send out the recording. Okay, let's have a look at the questions. Yeah, we'll get the recording to everybody. Can there be an admin person? Rebecca, it depends which position. Are you talking about for health and safety? They have to be, primarily their role has to be safety related. So HR, you can probably do depending on the nature of their HR, but if they're more sort of reception, admin, and then safety is something that they do one day a week, they're not getting through. It needs to be the dominant part of their role now. They did it originally, they put all sorts of people in health and safety, but they've really cracked down on that one. But if you want to talk to us about that one individually, we can tell you whether we think it's likely to fly or not. A coordinator or a campus manager, if they, again, if their primary role is safety, then you can get them through on that. If not, new workers, yes, truck drivers and coach drivers, I'm pretty sure there's some stuff, I'm pretty sure that's on the existing worker list one, because I know that's a skills shortage area. And I also saw something the other day, you might have seen it as well, that the federal government has just thrown a bucket of money into traineeships for truck drivers and coach drivers because there's such a massive skills shortage. So if you want to have a chat with us about that one afterwards, whether you use us to do this for you or not, I'm happy to try and track down that thing for you. And there's funding and training for truck drivers, definitely. Okay, here's just a quick example of what comes back once you're approved. This one was certificate for in civil construction, and they're an existing worker. It's probably too blurry, you probably can't read it. They've been there for years and years, and they approved to do a supervisor's course. Now, let me just, before we go, I'll just step you through what you need to do to claim. And then you'll know, so if you decide to do it yourself, this is what you need to do. And if you decide to get us to do it, this is what we'll do. So before you claim, there's a bit of preparation. So first thing you need to do is have a look at which courses are suitable for your business, because you can't be, if you're a beauty therapist, you can't put them on a plumbing course or something, it won't get approved. It's got to be relevant to their job. And each state has got different courses that they've approved for this. So the federal government's providing the money, but the state government's got to choose which courses they would allow, as often happens in these things. So think about any new think about any new staff that you want to take on and skills you want them to have. Think about any existing staff that might be eligible for the existing worker list of courses. Check that they've qualified, check that you've got someone to supervise your trainees. So unfortunately, if you've got one person working by themselves in the middle of nowhere, they won't be eligible, because one of the rules says you've got to have a supervisor. They don't have to be their manager, but they have to be somebody who can actually check that they're doing their training and that they're learning it on the job and stuff like that. And for some reason, the powers that be haven't actually figured out that there's this thing called Zoom yet, where you could actually manage and supervise somebody remotely. And so they're still looking for your person who's doing training to have somebody who can eyeball them. And I guess that's based on, you know, the history of this was apprentices. So if you've got a 17-year-old electrical apprentice, as we know, we don't want them doing work unsupervised. And so they've applied the same rule to Diploma of Leadership and Management for your middle managers, which is odd, but it is what it is. Check into the employee incentives and the state-based incentives, because this is a federal subsidy. And then if you're in Victoria, you can get Jobs Victoria grant. If you're in Queensland, you might be able to get Youth Boost or one of the other job creation ones. The other states, some of them have little bits to go on top, like an extra $4,000 here and there, which is not to be sneezed at either. Choose yourself a training provider. So you need to find one who's actually approved by the state government to run the course as a traineeship. Preferably find one who's got funding, like if you're in New South Wales, find one who can do it for free. Most of the other states, the government heavily subsidises the approved providers. Choose what they call an Australian Apprenticeship Support Network. So those are the agencies that are funded by the federal government to sign people up for this, basically. So they've got the delegated authority from the federal government to approve people. You've probably heard of some of them like Busy at Work and MEGT and those sort of things. So choose the one that works in your state that hasn't got a 2-month waiting list at the moment. And then you just organise a sign up between your employer, your US, and then your training provider, lodge your wage claim, and then claim for your other incentives. So we can help with most of that if you want us to, or you can work your way through that list and do it yourself. Now, the easy part, once you've done all that, claiming the actual wage subsidy is really easy. So we do it ourselves at the end of each quarter. So it's each financial quarter. So if you put someone on sort of nowish, you'll get your first one at the end of March. So early April. So you do have to pay them first and then claim it back. So this is not going to solve any cash flow issues. Because you don't get paid till after you've paid the people. So same as JobKeeper, bit of a pain. But as long as you can get through the quarter, then they will pay you back. The other thing I'd just caution you is that they are so swamped at the moment that they're supposed to pay you in the second week of the month after the quarter ends. We got our payment that should have been July, August, September. So we should have got it early October. We didn't get it till the middle of November. So you probably need to count on the fact that it's going to be 6 weeks after the end of the quarter by the time they pay you. It says here 14 days. It's meant to be 14 days, but you will definitely get it if you're approved, but they are slow. And we've got some good contacts now in most of the agencies, and we can nag them and speed it up. And I've pretty much found that anyone that we've nagged, they've turned it around within a couple of days. So yeah, it's pretty simple. Once the registration part's done, the actual claim each quarter is simple. A couple of questions that we get quite a lot to, and then I'll come back to the ones that are in the chat. I see we've got some more, is what if my employees don't pass? As one really nice man who worked in concreting said to us, but my guys are kind of thick. I'm sure they're not, but doesn't matter. You still get paid as long as they are making an honest attempt to do it and they're engaging in it. If they do nothing, if they won't talk to their training provider, if they don't do anything, then the state government has got the right to cancel the traineeship and stop paying you. And in extreme cases, they've got the right to claw the money back, like if there was fraud involved. But if they're just trying and they don't pass, that's fine. And the other question that we get around that is, what if they leave halfway through? Well, you get the wage subsidy up to the day that they leave. You don't have to pay it back, but obviously the subsidy stops when they leave because you're not paying any wages anymore. The other question we've been getting a bit is, what about my supervisors? Are they going to have to spend lots of time doing the training? It's like, no, the training provider provides the training, but your supervisor needs to sign off to say, yes, Fred knows how to run a meeting, or Fred knows how to put together a project scope, or whatever the thing is that they're being trained to do. Same as it happens for normal trains. Okay, thanks, Marina. Okay, campus manager, course coordinator. I think we answered that. Maya, let me know if we didn't. So we're here first quickly. If you get us to help, we do it on a no-win, no-fee kind of basis. Our primary driver for doing this project was about making sure, initially we claimed it ourselves, and then we went, look, we do this sort of stuff for businesses all the time. Why don't we add this to our services? So we do not want you to pay out money if you're not getting money. So we will make sure you don't pay us unless you get approved, and you don't pay the training provider unless you get approved. And we'll only recommend training providers that will work on those terms. And if cash flow is an issue, then don't pay us until you get your first quarterly payment. So we don't want to put stress on your cash flow. So here's the thing. I guess the bureaucracy, I imagine, if you're sensible, not like us, is not your core business. What we're tending to find is that people are really busy because things are booming or busting. There's really not much in between at the moment. And you are very welcome to do this yourself. And I'm happy to send you the slides and you can work through it. However, and there's a big however, we keep running into people whose applications are getting rejected because they're coded wrong, or because they're given the bad advice about how to lodge the claim. The way that they've described the person's job doesn't match up with the course, and they get rejected. So when you think about it, the providers, the ASINs who are signing people up, have signed up 217,000 people in the last year. I was talking to one just before Christmas, and they had 100 new staff starting that Monday. There's no way that those 100 new staff will be across all the nitty-gritty details of how to fight for stuff, and they haven't got time to fight for stuff. So what I would suggest that you do to maximize your claim is get us to do all the setup, like your accountant probably did for you for JobKeeper originally, if you claimed that. And then once a quarter, you just need to upload your pay slips. So you can carry on with your core business. When it's approved, you just forward 10% of the approved amount to us. So we charge you 10% of the total. You keep the rest, and you just carry on doing what you're doing, which presumably is not to manage all this stuff. And yeah, like I said, if you've got cash flow challenges, we are very happy to wait until the first grant money gets into your account, because we want to do whatever we can to help. Let me just check the questions. Oh, now that wasn't me that posted that in the chat. That's Rachel, who's impersonating me. Thank you, Rachel. Rachel's just dropped in the chat under my name a link to a quiz. Thank you for reminding me. So we put together a little quiz to get things started where you can just go through and say, these are my employees, this is when they started, this is what jobs they do, and then we'll have a quick look at it. And what we'll do is if we look at it and we find that, oh, look, that's something you can just do easily yourself, we'll tell you. If it's something we think you'll benefit from, then we will come back to you and show you what to do. So the first step basically is for you to provide us with some information and give us your approval to work on it for you. And we will do a quick assessment. Go away, cat. Sorry, people. I don't know if you're getting to see my cat's tail every 5 minutes, but anyway, working at home. We will do a quick assessment of your eligibility. So use that link that Rachel under my name has dropped into the chat, and or we can send it out to you afterwards if you haven't grabbed it out of the chat. And that will give us the starting information that we need. It should only take you 5 or 10 minutes to fill it out. I mean, well, half the time when we do these webinars, we get our phone beeps at us that people have filled out the forms before I've even finished talking. So after we've done that, we will advise you about whether we think there's anything for you, first of all, and if it's not, we won't waste your time. If it's a really simple one, we'll just tell you and say, look, you've got an electrician, go do advanced trade and electrical and sign up for wage subsidy, and you don't need us probably to help with that one. If it's more complex though, and we know that you're going to get more money if we do it, then we will definitely tell you that. Now, as we are working from home, so in terms of contacting us, probably the easiest way is, if you want us to investigate it for you, fill out the form in the chat. If you want to email Elisa, I've put her email on the screen, elisaw@sagestrategy.com.au. She will help you with anything you might have already spoken. Oh, and Elisa has dropped her mobile number in the chat. Thank you very much, Elisa. That's very nice of you. Because if you ring our office number, of course, it'll just go to voicemail. So if you ring Elisa and talk to her if you want to, or just do the form. Oh, I should pause for breath. Sorry, that took a very long time. I had more questions than usual. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around to the end. Do you have any more questions? If not, we will wrap up. Just grab that link, fill out that form. We will let you know what we can do. We hope we can get you some money and some training. We take 10%, Rebecca, of the total. So we can stage that if you want to stage the payments, whatever. We'll be flexible about that. Thank you, Elisa. And yeah, and the other stuff that we didn't talk about very much because we were running out of time, I must have talked too much, is the state funding. So we will work that out as well. Make sure you tell us when you do that quiz what state you're in, and we'll tell you about the extra money that you can get from different states. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I hope that was really useful to you, and I hope your businesses go well in 2022. And I hope that 2022 is a little bit more settled for all of us than the last couple of years. All the best, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.